Buffalo in the playoffs.
And last thing I wanted to touch upon was the World Juniors, because we haven't talked about that. Canada bows out in the quarterfinal game. Everyone lost their minds. Everyone loses their minds when Canada loses. We're just expected to win every time. But the Americans put on quite a dominant performance. They captured the gold medal. Do you think the U.S. has caught up to Canada at this point in their hockey development?
I'll let Rob, maybe Rob wants to go first on this one. I'm trying to. I want to say something, but I want to say it the right way.
The U.S. has been good for
a long time.
Jeez, yeah. I want to say 10 years. Well, let's wind the clock back 30 years.
When Bobby Bottles was playing for the Hillcrest Summits and he played an American team, they gave him a good challenge.
When I was playing with the Mississauga Rebels, the U.S. was the best hockey nation in the mid-90s.
We were the worst team in the GTHL.
Yeah, we weren't very good, no question, but we had the best rink for sure. Iceland won, but no, they were tremendous in the 90s. The World Cup of Hockey where they kind of beat Canada, and Canada had that little dip there. I don't think Canada went 6 years without winning a World Junior, and then the U.S. went on a lull. They've done a great job of development over the last 10, 15 years, and I think people think they are a viable threat. If this was they did like a Summit Series or they did something, I don't think anybody would say, hey, like the U.S. are going to be pushovers. They have better goaltending than Canada. They have better defense than Canada. The forwards, you can argue Canada has the best forwards, and nobody would ever argue against you. But they've been doing a good job for the last 10 years. There's just something about big moments, though, that I guess watching them, in the Olympics, watching Canada constantly come up in these big moments it's just whenever Canada needs a win, it just seems like it means more to us. Whereas, if you look in the States, hey, hockey's big and it's probably growing in the South with, LA being good and Matthews, emerging in a non-hockey market. That might help a little bit, but at the end of the day, these are northern state. It's a northern state sport. And they're always going to have the culture of football and basketball and baseball ahead of us, whereas we're hockey. So it always will mean more. I like when Canada loses, to be honest with you, at the juniors, because I feel like we win all the time, and that's not good for the sport either.
I agree.
They've won they won 4 of 7, I believe we were talking about for the show. It's good, and especially when you can sit there and say, well, if Connor Bedard's there, and you brought up if Fantilli's there, Canada's probably not. They're probably not losing that tournament. They're at least in the finals. So. But the U.S. has done a great job of their development. I think Sweden's done a very good job, but Sweden was always good. Finland was coming along really well, but they've just got a smaller population. I think all these countries are growing and catching up. We can argue at the lower levels in, minor hockey, what Hockey Canada is doing, whether you like it or don't like it. But these other countries are catching up, which is not necessarily a bad thing.
Yeah, Rob, you make some awesome points there, and kind of going down the road I was going to go down. So, you look at the World Juniors, you can say short-term competition can often kind of be unpredictable in nature. Who's ever having those best 2 weeks could be really any one of the 4 teams, right? Right. Some teams have dozens of games in an entire regular season to go through ups and downs, and you're talking about a 2-week window for these teams to gel together. And, then you look at Canada and USA and how they pick their teams. Are you taking the best 12 players? Or are you taking 2 top lines of skill and 2 checking lines? That's kind of been the argument as well, right? So, the way I see it is, arguably you have the most popular hockey tournament of the year, right? So you can kind of view it as the pinnacle of hockey, minor hockey development. So you have players in Canada still young enough to play in the CHL, and now some Canadians are kind of going over to the USHL for development. We've been seeing, and they're participating in the Hockey Canada program of excellence, whatever. They're kind of that program where they kind of put kids through the national program. But I kind of look at the fundamental differences in U.S. And Canadian hockey, and Rob, you're going through it. You've been through it. I've seen it now. Kind of going through the age groups of tyke all the way up to minor midget. I see it like this. Well, Canada, US, you're right, are both thriving, but there are distinct differences to me on how that sport is played and how it's taught and how it's developed. Canadian hockey is more deeply rooted in culture, known for its physicality, whereas Americans focus on speed, skill, strategy, right? And when they come to blow, at certain levels of competition, you can say like, well, the World Juniors, US has the edge because their team is more skilled and fast. Where in the Olympics, you might say, well, Canada's better suited for this type of hockey. Maybe the rink is smaller and they play a more of a solid or kind of a rough game, right? So I just think the way that they're developing their kids is different. I personally, the trend now is starting to say US maybe is, I would say, have the edge and kind of just wait. Players are going back to that small, skilled type of hockey. I see it through my kid. You take him to these skill sessions, and Rob, they're doing things at 7, 8 years old that I couldn't do now. So that whole idea of speed and skill is coming back, right? So, I just think the model's neither right nor wrong. But I think that speed and skill is starting to maybe come back this way for Canada. And I can't speak for goaltending, but I think we can all agree that whatever Canada is doing for goaltending lately, they have to do the opposite. Because I got to tell you, man, if they're starting the Olympics right now, I could not choose between
Aiden Hill,
probably 8 guys.
Connor Ingram.
Today it's Ingram, tomorrow it's Jari, or who knows? But that is a problem, right? So that's just kind of where I see it.
Do you feel like goaltending, without question, they've done a poor job? I would argue that defensemen, like Canada's got nice defense. Like they've obviously got Cale Makar, who's fantastic. But if you look at the American defense, they almost favor smaller, skilled guys. Whereas I feel like up here, when we see a smaller skill guy, we're like, oh, he's got to play forward because we got to have a 6'4" or 6'5" back. Do you think that there's something like? Do you guys think there's something we're doing wrong from the defensive side? Because if you look at the American defense, I mean, they can all skate. They're mobile. They're a tremendous group. I could argue that their D are just as good, if not better, than Canada's.
That is a good. That's a good question because I look at Vegas Golden Knights. All those guys are massive. 6'3", 6'4", Ontario boys, Manitoba boys, Western Canada boys. You got Pietrangelo, you got Brady McNabb, you got Shea Theodore. Like the list goes on, right? And that was a team built specifically to be big, mobile, and tough. Now you look at, I'm just going to try to pull up a roster here, Robbie. You're asking about the U.S. defense. You look at guys like Quinn Hughes, Charlie McAvoy, Adam Fox, who came out of nowhere, Zach Werenski, not massive guys, but
Jacob Slavin
on the smaller side, Slavin, Jake Sanderson, who I think is I really like Sanderson. It's too bad he's playing in Ottawa. Ottawa still has a team, right? I'm just checking. So guys like that is nothing to shake a stick at. Like that's a decent 5 or 6 guys. But you're right, Rob. It's like, look at Lane Hudson, kid in 04. He's a Montreal draft pick. That kid is putting up, he put up the most. I can't remember the stat. He put up the most points by a defenseman in like NCAA history in his first year or something like that. At that level, can it translate, to the NHL, or does he just become a power play specialist like a Marc-Andre Bergeron? Remember that guy? So it's like. It's also the makeup of your organization too. Like I couldn't tell you what the Leafs are doing on the back end because next to Topi Niemela, like what is their plan? You have to have a certain plan, a certain directive from your scouting staff to say these are the type of guys that we want. And I think Vegas has got the blueprint down packed, man.
We are, dare I say it, all big time coaches now. Joe getting into it. Do you guys think there's a fundamental aspect to so the goaltending thing? It's like we favor forwards. So, I think there's less goaltender correction in practice. It's just shot. And just.
Well, not every team even has like a goaltending coach, right?
Goaltending coach, yeah.
If it's like us 3 on the ice, we don't nothing about goaltending. So I'm certainly not going to correct the goalie on what.
Very little, yeah. It's. I was talking to my goalie today. I'm terrified to say anything because I don't know if that's against what the goalie coach. But do you think there's fundamentally like? I think they give like the American, like I look at like the States and it's like I feel like they give them more creativity with the back end and they allow them to be more offensive, whereas we're very safe with the puck and very defensive minded. Do you guys think that there's anything to the fundamentals maybe that we discourage off. Like I have an offensive defenseman and someone's like moving to forward. It's like, why? I finally have a guy that's thinking offensive from the D side, which is what I want. You want that.
Well, that's the thing, right? Again, Rob, that comes down to coaching. If you're a type of coach that wants to push the pace and have and you want to activate defensemen into the offensive zone, then you need offensive-minded guys. You have some guys who, as soon as the puck is coming back the other way, they're already back to the red line, backing up, right? So it's good to have a good mix. But again, it goes down to coaching. If you're that offensive style, you want as many offensive guys as possible. Then you can work on the defensive side. You can teach a kid how to defend, but you can't really teach a kid, if you got skill and you got that offensive mind, that's kind of like that. That's an innate skill. Whereas trying to play more defensive structure in a zone, or I don't know what you guys do, Rob, I don't know if it's like a man-to-man or whatever, like that's more of a coaching tactic than, than what you're saying. It's a little bit more difficult to do that with offensive-minded guys. But when you get a turnover, you just don't want glass and out. You want an outlet pass. You want to play a possession game. You want an outlet pass.
You got to see, like, I went to watch an OHL game. It's all rimming the puck now. Like that's all it seems like that's all they're teaching now. And it's like if you're a winger, I would be losing it. But that's what they're being taught now. But I hope that coaches aren't discouraging offensive defensemen. That's my thing. It's like you should embrace that kind of aspect. I like my defense jumping up in the rush and being a fourth forward, right? Right, Joe?
We need more coaches like you, Bobby. I really encourage that defense.
Well, you know who we should ask? It's Ty Nelson.
Ty Nelson, right? Like he's fantastic at an offensive, jumping in the offense. That's what you're looking for.
I think that would be the perfect guy to ask, who just came back from the World Juniors. And you know what, Rob? Playing a different role. He went there as number 7. Mm-hmm. He won some ice, but they were going to him more as an extra guy. But he's the guy in North Bay. Putting up all those points, power play. He's their offensive, point man, their quarterback on their power play. That's a good question. I'm playing a different role, and what's kind of the trend, and where does he see it going, or where is the OHL at that point? So you know what, I will do what I can to connect with him and see what we get. See if I can get him on the pod, and that'd be a great discussion to have with him. But like kind of just finishing that point with we were talking about it a little before. Listen to this. So we're talking about other countries. So each nation kind of like has their own innovative stuff, right? So just kind of give you an example. So in Sweden, and we can sort of get this right here, there are no standing or stats for kids U13 and below in Sweden. So it is a national rule that they do not keep stats. So you won't have a guy calling the coach saying, "Hey, my son put up like 48 points in like 33 games."
They're still keeping their own stats.
Yeah,
they whatever it is, but like they don't actually post it. So like scores are kept during games, but there's no written record of wins or losses. Finland has a goaltending coach on every team at every age level, starting at U7. House League Select, A, AA, MD, whatever they have, all has a
goaltending coaches they need.
Okay?
That's tremendous, though. That's a fantastic aspect.
Denmark is geared towards a more practice-based model through their own. There are regular season games that increase in frequency. However, they do not play real games or regular season games until the age of 12. So you don't play games. All you do is practice. And here's my favorite. USA Hockey was one of the first mandates modified ice programming at the U8 level, which has now moved over to Hockey Canada. And being a parent of a U8 son right now playing in, dare I say, the NYHL, I hate it. I absolutely hate it. My son plays in a blue line, or played in a blue line to blue line zone, where the kids are being played in a 4-on-4 like sardines in a can. No movement whatsoever. Why? To benefit those kids who are maybe having trouble skating or not at that level. Instead of trying to catch up to a guy who's 50 paces away, now you're only like 8 paces away. So I get that.
Isn't the idea to like foster quicker decision making, more touches on the puck?
Not when you got guys on the bench yelling to their best players, "Wheel, wheel, wheel." At 8 years old, there is no real coaching. Like, there are guys who can't coach himself in a wet paper bag at this level, Joe. But like now there's rogue leagues who at U8 play full ice, which teach kids hot offsides and icings and
So let me get this straight. So you like
develops
the
their
Sweden
mind
model,
quicker.
you like the Finland model, you like the Danish model, you don't
Oh,
like the
no, I
American
didn't say I
model because
like
we've
them. I'm just
adopted
giving
that.
you examples of what other countries are doing.
I don't like that they go from all this time of playing half ice to one half season of playing full ice.
It's bullshit.
If you want to do
I
that,
like the
that's
idea of shrinking the ice for smaller kids,
for smaller
but
kids.
you need
fine.
to make new rinks with a smaller ice surface, still have the blue lines and the red lines. You're still playing with the same rules, just with a smaller ice surface. I agree in that, like, the boards to boards thing is dumb. They're not learning positioning. It's just like shinny hockey. So
There's just
I think there's
as
got to be a happy
coaches,
medium in between.
as coaches, we use the dots now as just as basically like guidelines, or everything is about the dots, whether it's dots in, dots out, D zone. Everything is focused on that. I don't know how you teach that when it's half ice. That's a great idea, Joe. If you can do smaller ice, the question is who's putting in a compressor and maintaining a smaller ice for.
They have them, Bobby. They just need more of them.
I
Like
don't
in
think
Richmond
but
Hill,
I
they
think
have
you're
them.
talking about small ice. You're talking about like 50 by 50, whereas I'm thinking like 100 by 100, like where it's like a rink just smaller. Everything's
Yes, that's what I'm
in
saying.
the same
Yeah.
dimensions.
Yes.
I've never seen one. I've never seen
There's one in Richmond Hill,
I've never seen it.
Ontario.
But how
Personally,
small
guys-
are we talking?
Well, that's
I don't know. I don't. And I didn't take my measuring tape out when I was there. Sorry.
But like, think of it like this. Come on, guys. Like, as a parent now seeing it, like the first, I want to credit Christopher Stieg and the Clever guys for coming up with this idea, because I was a little, apprehensive about it when I heard about it, but seeing it and tiering teams properly, I have not seen one blowout game in 2015, 2016, okay, maybe 2017, because there's less kids. But like, you want to look at the next 2 years of so-called AAA coming up, they tier you properly. Full ice and close games, and you're playing teams that every game is a competitive game. Whereas this half ice type of hockey, where not as many teams or not as many kids, and you can either destroy a team by 15 goals or then get your head kicked in next game by 20 goals. I want to know how that is constructive for kids at this age group. I'm lucky enough where my son couldn't care less coming out of that rink, knowing that either won or lost. He skated hard, he battles, that's all he cares about, thank God. But as things go on, and it's not indicative of the team, it's just the type of teams that we're playing, we have no choice but to play. Whereas this new system, and again, going into AAA and getting these kids ready a year prior, is so important for development. And Rob, you know it now, coaching these younger guys. How much longer do you think you would take a kid who's coming from half ice to make that transition to AAA? How much longer is it going to take for them to understand icing, offsides, hash marks, goalie creases? We play with one goalie crease right now. Like, it's ridiculous. And it's really made me think about making that move next year before GTHL AAA starts.
You're saying that you don't like Duffield beating teams 14-0. That's not good for the
14
kids.
14-0 is generous. I heard way worse scores than that.
Oh, yeah.
32-0. It's horrendous.
That's not good. That's bad for the game.
It's just,
if you're going to run house league out of, you know what? I don't like. It's a very hard conversation to have, because in AAA hockey, and across all levels, you're going to have like 2 or 3 dominant teams, and the rest are just kind of getting their faces kicked in by them. But if you're going to play it out of the same rink, why not just have like a draft system where it's like, teams draft players instead of having all, you have the 6 best kids on one team, and what good is that?
I'm sure they'll manipulate that one too, Rob.
No, probably.
We'll somehow get the kids on the same team. That's for sure. Tryouts are just like tryouts now,
Yeah. Well, that's been like that always.
This is a great, there's a great, I hope we talk about this again, because there are so many people that are frustrated, but also passionate about this topic. And I got to tell you, man, Joe, let me tell you something. There were 2 tiers. This last tournament in Clever, there were 2 tiers. Okay. There were 22 teams in this tournament of one age group, 2 divisions. That is a lot of kids versus an NYHL division of 4 teams. So that's got to be telling you something, man, that you know, sometimes it's working when you just go to what has worked in the past, essentially, and not changing the game completely. That's not the answer.
One day we'll talk about hockey parents and how they're affecting player development.
Ooh.
That'd be a juicy. That'd be a really
Ooh.
good.
What about the hockey parent that's also the hockey coach? Ooh.